Ja, dankjewel. We verheugen ons erop.
Goedemiddag and good afternoon, because we switched to English because we got an international audience today. So good afternoon to everybody here in the Student Hotel City Auditorium, and also a very good afternoon to everybody joining the live stream from 12 countries in Europe. At least we got registrations from these countries. And we also have a couple of registrations from the United States of America. So also a very good morning to you. Now, speaking about the United States of America, last week I happened to be visiting the Pega Systems headquarters in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And that was for the first time since I joined Pega Systems back in 2020. And I met with clients, I met with partners, and I met with my colleagues for the first time. And you know that when you're meeting with people, then you get that feeling of excitement. You have a different experience than when you're talking to people over a WebEx or a Zoom call. And that feeling of belonging, that feeling of being part of something bigger, now that is what organizations are trying to achieve also with their customers. That true one-to-one customer experience, that is what we will be talking about today. That is the topic of today's session. Now, I'm René van der Laan, and I'm a one-to-one customer engagement veteran, if you can call yourself that. I'm in that industry since the late 1990s. In Pega, I joined Pega in 2020, and I'm in Pega, I'm a one-to-one go-to-market or one-to-one customer engagement go-to-market director. And what that means is that we basically enable the client-facing people in Pega with the right messaging around our one-to-one customer engagement solutions. Now, I've talked about Pega a little bit, but who are Pega, or what is Pega? Pega is an American software company, and that was founded 39 years ago. And if you put it like that, we are providing technology to create that low-code platform for artificial intelligence-powered decisioning and workflow automation. Now, that is a mouthful, but basically what we do is we help organizations to get more done by doing less. That is basically what our tagline is. And today we'll focus on that AI-powered decisioning part, that technology that enables the largest business-to-consumer organizations around the globe to enable organizations to create that one-to-one customer experience and that one-to-one customer engagement. And at Pega Systems, we do that with 6,500 people, and we generate about 1.2 billion in revenue annually. Now, today's event is not just about Pega, because it's a joint event with the Data-Driven Marketing Association, the DDMA. And and this is basically the kickoff of our partnership. And you heard Rob Walker already talk about that. But Rob was talking in Dutch, so the people that were joining remotely probably didn't get that. So I'll quickly sort of tell what that is all about. And that partnership is all about sharing information and learning from the members of the Data-Driven Marketing Association. And what the DDMA stands for and what they say, and I truly endorse that, is that there is never a dull day in the world of data-driven marketing. And what the DDMA does is they guide its members through the ever-changing world of the changing world of legislation, the changing world of new business models, and the new enabling technologies that drive one-to-one customer engagement. And besides that, what they also say is that the customer expectation is changing. They expect more and more from organizations in terms of relevance and in terms of data privacy and protection. Now, the DDMA, together with its partners like Pega, they want to make sure that their 360 plus member organizations are prepared for these changes. Now, what you heard Rob Walker say in the introduction is that, in his interview with Erik Molkenboer, is that the partnership is all around Pega sharing its experience, Pega sharing what organizations around the globe have done in a one-to-one customer engagement. So we can showcase the successes of other organizations and also how they are applying artificial intelligence in a transparent and unbiased manner. But also what we want to learn is from you, from the members of the DDMA and the guests that we have invited today, both in this room as well as over the phone. And that is probably the most interesting thing for us as well, to learn from you. Now today we have a very interesting lineup of speakers, and let me talk you through the agenda a little bit. So we start off with Liz Sleyffers from Pega Systems. Now Liz is a senior solutions consultant with a focus on one-to-one customer engagement, and Liz will talk about the what, why, and how of one-to-one customer engagement. Basically, she will introduce the theme of today's meeting. Now, after Liz, Jeroen Dijkstra of Achmea, an insurance company, will talk about the importance of having the right, relevant, and real-time data. And Jeroen is a manager omnichannel personalization at Achmea. Now, after Jeroen's presentation, then Rabobank will join me here on stage explaining how the organization have applied empathy in their approach to one-to-one customer engagement, and they will also introduce the 4 pillars on which they've based their one-to-one strategy. And Rabobank will be represented by Ludo Teurlings and Paul Euler, and they're both product managers for customer engagement, if I'm correct. Yes. And before we start the panel conversation, we'll hear from Rob Vermeer. And Rob is at Merkle, and at Merkle he is the marketing technology practice lead. And Rob will introduce us to what he calls the expectations business, and I'm very curious to hear what that is all about. And he also will explain why organizations are coming to Merkle to ask for help with their customer engagement challenges and with their customer experience challenges. And as said, we will close with a panel where we're inviting our speakers for today. And we will open it up for questions from the audience here. We have a mic that we can pass around, but we'll also have a forum that people can ask questions if they're joining us through the live stream. And we'll also have a guest speaker in case he makes it in time through the horrible weather outside and through traffic. But we'll hope that that will work out. But I didn't come here to, or you didn't come here to listen to me talking, right? So without further delay, it's my pleasure to welcome Liz Sleyffers to the stage. And next to being my colleague at Pega, she is also an active member since 3 years of the Digital Marketing Transformation Committee at the DDMA. So please give a warm welcome to Liz.
Laat de telefoon liggen. Is my mic working? Oh, that's nice. Thank you, René. You got that right. So thank you everyone for being here. Let me switch to the next slide. Oh, that's not working. Okay, well, as René mentioned, I don't know if this is very loud, I'm the one-to-one customer engagement specialist from Pega System. And what I'm going to do today is do a little bit of an intro around the topic. But because you guys are already going to get so much information thrown at you, I wanted to start with a very basic concept. And I already gave you a quick preview. And the basic concept starting is that I am an individual next to being a customer that... Okay, well, that's already going very well. Which way do I go back? Oh. Okay, so that's what I was going to start with. Great technical skills I have. So what I was going to start with is the fact that I'm a customer, like we all are here in the room. We all have our telephone plans. We all have our energy bills that are sadly going up. We all have our bank accounts. That is not really a new piece of information. But what I wanted to note is that we are also just our own person. We are individuals. Very cliche maybe, but thinking about how we are expecting to interact with each other versus interacting with organizations comes down to who we are as a person, who we are outside of our jobs. So we are MarTech professionals probably here in the room and dialing in, but we have different hobbies. We do different things for fun. We have different ways of shopping. We have different ways of what we find important to spend our money on. And keeping that in mind, I think it's important as we go through these topics and the speakers today, because it's easy for us to think and listen from the MarTech professional point of view, but maybe here and then think about how you would actually want to be spoken to or treated by organizations as an individual. because we're all customers, but we're also all individuals. So when we put this together in a bit of a definition format, if you will, just like we want in personal relationships, we also kind of are seeking that in the relationships with our organizations or the businesses that we deal with on a day-to-day, right? So for organizations, it's a similar way of thinking. So to build deep customer relationships, we need to act like humans, and then therefore we have to listen to the signals that provide insights to be able to react or act accordingly per individual. And it's also a mouthful, but I think it's very important that it has so many commonalities between how we want to be discussing topics or going through life with our personal relationships as when you would want to do that with organizations. And I break this down a little bit between a couple of expectations or 3 themes, components, if you will, that are part of that one-to-one customer engagement notion. And one of them is the privacy and protection. And as a customer, I would like to actually have faith in the organizations that I give my data to, right? I want to feel secure that they are going to protect it and not share it, or that they can be hacked very easily. And this importance of data, like we said, Jeroen is going to go a bit further into that. Next to that, consistent experiences. It's very important, of course, to have a similar type of level of experiences when you interact with organizations, similarly to when you would interact with friendships. If you would meet someone every week for a hockey training or what have you, and some of them keep canceling last minute, that is not a type of consistency that you would like or appreciate in a friendship. So why would you accept it from organizations, right? And the experiences and expectations of customers is something that Rob is going to discuss a little bit further later. And then lastly, again, the human relationships. So just like I mentioned before, we all want to be treated and respected as individuals, just like you would do offline or in your personal life. You want the same from your day-to-day organizational communication, which is the empathy that Rabobank is going to talk about. So why should we care? Why is this something that we're going to talk about? Well, it's very important to understand that we currently are in a very challenging time. So when we look at this definition one more time, I'm mentioning the signals and the insights that we all need to interact with one another. And these signals and insights are not just originated from us as customers ourselves. They're heavily influenced by the macroeconomical changes and challenges that we have around us and external factors that organizations or customers do not have any influence on. So, for example, the unemployment rates, as you might have noticed if you've been to any restaurant or Schiphol recently, or the geopolitical challenges like the war in Ukraine, which is, of course, a humanitarian crisis, also having a massive immediate impact on the electricity prices that we're noticing immediately here, as well as supply chain issues. So if you ordered a car or kitchen or whatever recently, you will notice that there's a lack of raw materials, which is causing immediate effects on your organization and your purchases as well. But something that's not on the screen is the cyber criminals, that we're also facing in this day and age. And unfortunately, it's been one data breach after the other in the past decades. And usually also, actually, the larger organizations that we have been given a lot of our data to and that we think will be able to keep it safe. Of course, this is not a new one for Facebook. This is one of the latest ones, in which 533 million phone numbers and other personal data were leaked online. Microsoft has a whole full timeline of a yearly data breach from 2010 dating to this year. Same as the massive fines Instagram has received, and the latest of Twitter that had almost 5.5 million pieces of customer data where the hacker was basically able to connect their email address and their personal information to their user accounts. So this just goes to say that you cannot just assume that these organizations are keeping your data secure. So it's a very challenging ecosystem, if you will. The marketeers might know these slides. This is the most recent one from Scott Brinker, in which we can see almost 10,000 individual MarTech vendors in the market today. So each of these dots, you probably see them as dots, are logos. They're all individual vendors, and they're all part of the ecosystems that you're all basically living in, if you will. So if we look at that complexity, they're all individual vendors. They all have solving different problems, but they're also all different little brains, basically. So when you take some of that selection and you plot it against a typical example ecosystem, you get a bit of an overly complex overview with a lot of crossing lines. And it's kind of, we see this a lot, these types of ecosystems, and it's not really a surprise, of course, because over the past decade, these types of communication channels kept popping up, and all of these toolings were built to designed basically to fix the problem. But they're not really designed to talk to one another. So in this scenario, what also would be happening is that the customer data could be scattered across these different types of tools or channels, if you will, which can lead to an inconsistent experience, of course, but also an inconsistent use of your customer data. So when we look, of course, at the different pieces of information that customers are constantly seeing, yes, we obviously see that we're experiencing a lot of different messages, and the messages that we're receiving are coming from are sponsored from all these different vendors, right? So when you have these different vendors creating different solutions, you get a disconnected overview, which is leading to a disconnected customer experience. And so what we want to look at is, of course, how are we going to be able to solve for this? Well, firstly, transparency. So when it comes to privacy and protection, transparency, of course, garners trust. When it comes about the data that you're asking, explain why you're asking the data. What is it going to be used for? Be very upfront with being clear about that. Why is it necessary? And just like transparency is, of course, a very important piece, consistency is just as important. The consistency in experiences makes all the difference, of course. When you think about that example that I gave, if you have one time you have a very consistent, or you have a very good experience with the company, and a couple of times later your experience is kind of shit. So how would you trust that organization? So what we kind of say is that the consistency together with transparency garners trust. And that trust is very difficult to get, and once you have it, it's also, of course, very important to keep it. So when we look back at this ecosystem, what we believe at Pega is that you need a centralized decisioning hub, brain, if you will, that is able to sit at the center of all your different communication channels in order to listen to all these different signals and to understand these insights in order to actually react on them on an individual manner so that you actually can create that customer. I hope that with these brief overview, that I've been able to show a little bit about this original definition that I was giving. We're getting visitors. To show that the importance of the signals and the insights, to be able to react accordingly on a human level, to make sure that you create those happy customers, so that these three components, the privacy and protection, consistent experiences, and human relationships, are all together forming a good solid foundation of the one-to-one customer engagement approach, which should hopefully create a lot of happy customers and happy teams internally. So thank you for listening. I'll give it back to René, or are you going to ask me a difficult question? Of course.
Thank you, Liz. So you were talking about the what, why, and how of one-to-one customer engagement.
Oh.
In front of the, I'll go and stand next to you.
It's one at a time.
Yeah. So you were talking about that what, why, and how. Now, my question to you is, since you're also a member of the, and I have to look it up again, Digital Marketing Transformation
You can say
Committee.
DDMA.
Yeah? No?
Oh, my committee,
Exactly,
sorry.
your committee.
Yes.
So how does what you just said, how does that help you, how does that help the DDMA? But also, what does a DDMA help, or how does a DDMA help you in your job?
Yeah, I think it's mostly, dare I say, the latter, because being a part of a community like the DDMA, they keep me on my toes basically by just being in so many different meetings and hearing different opinions and challenges or solutions from other people around me, who are literally, of course, trying to get to this solution, because it's easy for us to be a little bit blindsided by all the opportunities because we are coming from the tech point of view. Mm-hmm. So hearing it from the other sides of the table is very valuable to actually stay realistic rather than think too innovative and too far into the future, because it's easy when you're surrounded by just tech and innovation. So that helps a lot, and I'm hoping, of course, that sometimes I can help bring some of that back into the DDMA. But they keep me grounded as well. So I hope it's a good relationship.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
you, Liz. And with that, I would like to. Ooh, that's. If you're in front of that, don't stand here. Let me put it that way. So with that, I would like to hand it over to Jeroen from Achmea. And Jeroen, you're going to talk to us about data. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to that. Thank you. Oh my.
Good afternoon. Nice to see such familiar faces in the audience today. Yeah, it's great to be face-to-face today, because I had a lot of digital talks, just like everybody here, I guess. But this is one of the first meetings we have face-to-face, so it's very nice to see you again. The middle one. Yes, I'm going to talk to you about personalization and specifically about data-driven customer engagement, because we are at the DDMA, of course, and it's data-driven, and we are a data-driven company. I work in the data part of the company of Centraal Beheer, but it's also one of the most important parts of the company that is data-driven. And I want to specifically focus on the data part of personalization in this talk. I don't know if everybody is familiar with Achmea. We are a big insurance company in the Netherlands, and the most important brands of our company are Zilveren Kruis, our health insurances. Rabobank helps us sell insurances for the brand Interpolis. And I work at Centraal Beheer, and also FBTO is part of that division of our company. We have a lot of customers within the Netherlands. We are around for a bit of time, 1811, so pretty long. And we're, of course, striving to be the most relevant and personal customer engagement of at least not the Netherlands, but of the world is our ambition, and we use data for that. And we have a lot of products, customer engagement products within our organization that use a lot of data. I have a couple of examples here. For instance, an automated insurance check that we use with a conversational dialogue. We have a usage-based car insurance, and we use the digital transformation for for instance, for voice of the customer. That is one of our latest efforts, that we pick up the signals that Liz was talking about. And it's getting harder and harder to pick up signals because they are everywhere, on every channel. And they're not structured data, so we need to structure this data ourselves. And how are we going to use all this data and make a consistent use of it in our personalization efforts? Well, I already said that this is the most important thing, especially for the part of the company that I'm responsible for, because we're striving to be the most personal and relevant customer engagement. And it sounds like a lot, but we really believe that this will impact the customer lifetime value in the end, and is very important for our customers, but also for our company. How did we start? We started in 2015. Of course, we were working on personalization efforts for a long time at that time. We were using email marketing, direct marketing, but we were also introducing some personalization efforts within our website, or for instance, in our call center. And we were building logic and data on these channels. And it became harder and harder to be consistent over these channels, because messaging in the call center, helping our agents to get the best message across in a specific phone call. And also remembering, hey, what email did this customer receive, and how are we creating this journey consistent? This became harder and harder if we didn't use a centralized solution. So what did we do? We became a customer of Pega, and yeah, I know. and now we were already a customer for our case management solutions, but we didn't use a centralized decisioning unit. And we started out in 2015 with next best action on the inbound channels to get personalization across. This was the start, and this is a simple architectural picture of how this works. Our architects can make the most incredible pictures and complex pictures with all the systems that are needed to get this in place, but I want to focus on the data part of this, and not about the technical side of our architecture, and what did we do in the time from 2015. I'm going to walk a bit about the journey we're heading off. Also, we started off in 2015 with the initial launch of the Brain on our website and in our contact center. This was an agile team. Of course, 2015, we didn't have a lot of agile teams at that time, but we started with an agile team, and currently we have a safe agile structure in our organization. So a lot of agile release trains, but at that time it was new, and we got the IT part of the company and the business part of the company together, and we created the first personalization efforts and connected it to the channel. In 2016, we started with a business team, because you can have an mixed IT team, but you also need a business team to create use cases. To personalize on all the channels that you're active. Currently, there are 20 people within my team that are constantly working on creating personalization use cases on all the channels that are connected. And of course, it was very valuable to get personalization on our inbound channels, but we had still a traditional outbound campaigning system in place at that time. And we also needed to integrate email marketing and inbound personalization. We want to become more and more consistent. So we started out, We also added the outbound part of campaigning in the same brain, and we added it every year. We added more channels, and currently we are personalizing in the app. We send personalized push notifications, and we the IVR, the interactive voice response system. Every channel that we communicate on with our customers are connected to the personalization brain, and we send out these personalized messages across all the customer journeys of our company. This year we are focusing on migrating to the cloud because we were still on-premise with our system, and it's a lot of work to transform this new system to the cloud. But it gives us a lot of new possibilities because we have a lot of thousands of personalization actions in place for our brands. But it helps us to structure them even further we call it customer journey orchestration. So you have all these actions in place and you try to be consistent but it really helps to get this added layer to the system with customer journey orchestration. And I believe that this will help us to get a step further forward. I will show you one of our best use cases that is still currently running and show you how the system works. I'm going to talk to you about a customer that is canceling his or her insurance and how does this work in our current environment. Well, the customer will enter the My Insurances environment on our website, and he will log in. We know who the customer is at that point, and unfortunately, this customer is thinking about canceling the insurance. So what happens? The customer adds the information, and at that point, a signal is sent to the personalization brain. Hey, there is a customer. We know who the customer is. We know what insurances he has. We know the reason why he's going to cancel his insurance because we ask it on our website. Do we have a personalization in place for this customer? What do we want to communicate with him? Well, in a lot of cases, we do not want a customer to leave, of course. And we expect them that there is still a possibility that we can keep the customer, especially when the customer is, for instance, not happy with a specific service and he is frustrated. So we advise the customer to call. So the personalization on the website is a specific phone number for our retention team. And fortunately, a lot of customers use this option and call our contact center. Of course, this takes place in a couple of minutes. And when the agent picks up the customer on the phone, the customer is recognized. There's again a signal will be sent to the personalization brain, and we will know this customer was just on the website. He was canceling the insurance. At least he wanted to cancel the insurance, and we want to talk to them. And what the reason of the cancellation was is also presented to the agent. So this helps the agent in the conversation, and in our experience, we 85% of the people that they speak to, we can keep as a customer. So this is very valuable for us. But what makes this possible? Of course, we have the personalization brain with all the algorithms in them and the models that our data scientists help us build. But we need the 360 customer view. This is crucial for your personalization efforts. And I cannot stress this enough. If you don't have the data in place and structured in your organization, it will be very hard to create a personalization over all the channels and all your processes. So luckily, we already had a very healthy customer view in place when we started out, but we were still trying to structure how are we going to leverage this data for personalization. And it starts all with, are we able to recognize the customer? Because you are not always able to recognize the customer on the channel that you are. Luckily, this problem is mostly takes part on our online environment. If you use the app of Centraal Beheer, you need to log in. If you enter the My environment or the contact center, we always recognize the customer. And this is crucial because at the point, at the moment that you find this customer at a specific channel, you want to send out a signal to your personalization brain and know if there is a relevant next best action in place. If you don't have a customer number, it will not be possible. And then it is, of course, very crucial that you collect and structure your context data, because we have a customer view with all the historic data of the customer in the customer view, but the customer is at that point at the specific channel, and he has been doing stuff on our website or on in the contact center or in the app, and all the interactions, all the goals and the behaviors that the customer is creating. He is creating this data we can use to be more relevant on this specific context. And the great thing is about the system that you can send this context data together with the signal of the customer data to the brain, and you can combine it with your customer view. And we call the customer view the customer analytical record. And this is the place where we structure all our customer data on a flat table, if you will. At least most of it's in a flat table, but we needed more. We needed more details of the customer, so we created a small logic systems with in a star model where we have a customer analytical record, a couple of tables that we use, and every time the customer is on in the brain, or we extract all this data from the customer analytical record, we combine it with the context data, and then the algorithm does the rest. And every time a personalization is created, we also create a record in the centralized interaction history. So the next time on the next website page or on the next channel the customer will visit, we have this information in place, and we can use it to improve the decisioning. Of course, this all needs to happen very fast. Personalization on our inbound channels, we say, okay, 200 milliseconds is the time we try and achieve for the round trip of, okay, the customer is on the channel, we need to show a signal to the personalization brain, collect all the data, make decisions in the decisioning brain, and send it back to the channel. And of course, this is very important because if a customer calls us, and we have our telephone menu, you cannot have the customer waiting for minutes when the brain is finished. So 200 milliseconds is the time we want to achieve this, and luckily we are able to achieve this in our environment. But for our outbound campaigning, we have another system, because we have every day a batch campaign is running, and all of our customers run through the brain every night, and look, is there a relevant email action for this specific customer? And they use all the data, all the contact policies, the priorities, everything we use to prioritize what the customer will get the next day. And these are very important things that you need to consider when you prepare your data. Because if you need a batch run and if you need to cycle through all your customers, of course you need an environment that is able to do that in a couple of hours and not in 48 hours, for instance. And a question that we have a lot of times within our organization is, when do you need real-time data for personalization? Well, it is most of the time very expensive to get real-time data on every time you make a decision, but this is what we strive for. We want at the moment that you make a decision for a specific customer, you want to have the data in place that is up to date. We don't have a lot of contact moments with our customers. We are an insurance company, and not everybody is in contact with an insurance company every day. I don't know if you have been in contact recently with your insurance company, but I have, of course. But I can imagine that not everybody has this kind of interactions, and so you want to make it worthwhile when the customer is having a contact with you, and make it as relevant and personal as possible. And so, to summarize, we see 3 critical success factors for personalization. You need the central decisioning solution, centralized logic instead of decentralizing it in the channels. What we do is always use case driven. So when we need data, we create it, and we have an agile process in place where we are able to create agile new data within our system. So we don't build endlessly amounts of data. No, when we need it, we create it in our customer view. And of course, you need to prepare your data. Structure your data for decisioning to get the speed that you need. Thank you.
So Jeroen, I've been listening to you talking, and then you were talking about making decisions in 200 milliseconds. That's almost faster than I can think. But you were talking about your 360-degree view of the customer, right?
Yeah.
And I think a 360-degree view is that you know everything about your clients, right? So is that a fact, or did you at some point decide this is what we need to know, and this is where we start and cut off and take it from there?
Well, of course, we don't know everything about our customers. That would be creepy. But we know what we collect in the system that we use. But we also have a lot of contact with our customer in the channels that we communicate. And the customer leaves information, also information about the contacts that we are having. And we're trying to structure this data not at one time, but we have this agile system in place that we create use cases. We think of use cases and, okay, what data do we need for this specific use case? And we add the data to the system.
Okay.
So it's use case driven.
Yeah, so that 360-degree view is constantly expanding.
Yeah, currently we are looking into the next quarter of the year. What data do we need, and how are we going to expand the customer analytical record for our specific needs for the next quarter?
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I think we're doing fantastic for time, so that's awesome. And with that, I would like to hand over to Rabobank, to Ludo and Paul. And you guys are going to talk to us about, well, you're going to give us a lesson in Greek, as far as I know, right? I leave it to you to explain that.
Yeah, well, welcome to our presentation. We are going to talk about empathy today, which is actually a central topic to us as a Rabobank. And that's actually the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. I think it's handy to start with an example from former times, from former days maybe. And what you do see here is actually a branch of Rabobank, and you can remember entering a branch of a bank in former days, where you would have a one-to-one situation. And in this situation, empathy was helping a lot, because it's a quite human ability to show empathy to one another. But let me slice up the process, because there are actually 4 really important steps in order to be able to show empathy. And it starts actually with understand one another. So if you imagine the situation in a branch where, for example, Ludo would enter, me as an advisor, I would actually recognize Ludo, and he might feel really uncomfortable in the beginning, having problems about talking about the real problem why he came to us. And it's quite amazing what in this situation is happening, because I'm receiving quite some data. I'm listening to his voice, I'm looking at the nonverbal communication Ludo sends, and that's quite amazing what we are able to process in this short amount of time. The second step of being able to show empathy is actually to decide. Because once I consumed all the data, Ludo entering, saying things, I'm doing that with my brain, and I'm doing that also in a split second. So I'm actually combining the data Ludo was sending me in this very situation in combination with the historical data I maybe have about Ludo. So I know that Ludo kind of got trouble every month to pay the bills maybe, and I also know that energy prices are sky high at the moment. And my brain is processing all that in a split sec in order to give a reaction, which would lead me to the third step of the process of being able to show empathy. And that's ACT. So based on the data I received, based on the references I have historically, but also from the society maybe, I'm going to act. And I'm going to actually communicate to Ludo, trying to make him feel comfortable, because I see that he's feeling uncomfortable in the situation, entering the branch, actually putting his problems on table. I'm doing that via my natural human channels, my voice, my nonverbal communication, trying to make him feel comfortable. And that leads me to the actual 4th step of the empathy cycle, which is actually learn. So without the ability to learn, we would not be able to actually check if the things we said, the actions we took, reached the goal we intended. So does Ludo actually feel comfortable now? Is he now openly talking about financial problems, maybe, in order to give him all the tools the Rabobank is offering in order to create financial health again? And in former days, as mentioned, this was a one-to-one situation. So we were able to make use of our very human abilities in order to show empathy, in order to use our actual abilities to receive the signals, to think about them, to act, to give a reaction, and to learn from that. But obviously, these times changed. So we are not in a one-to-one situation anymore, but we are, in Rabobank's case, in a 1 to 9 million situation. But there's also good news, because the process actually kind of stays the same. But there are some content changes indeed, because we are not understanding human signals anymore, like speech or nonverbal communication, like in the example with Ludo, but we are receiving digital data. So we are receiving clicks, and we are receiving behavior, online behavior. And then, next step, decide. We are not using our human brain anymore, but we are using AI. We are using an artificial brain in order to be able to decide what reaction would be the best in order to make our customers feel comfortable. And for that, we got our channels, not anymore our voice or our nonverbal communication, but our digital channels, like banners or push messages. And the last and maybe most important step for empathy is also the feedback again. We also need to actually learn if the action we took was receiving the goal we intended. And with that said, I'm giving it to Ludo, telling you something more about how we do that at Rabobank.
Thank you, Paul. Always nice meeting you in the branch. And be assured, I won't be talking about my problems. I will be talking about what we have been doing in Pega, in Rabobank, when we indeed switched to Pega Customer Decision Hub now 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago. Internally, we call it the Customer Engagement Messaging Hub, but for this occasion, of course, we call it the empathy cycle. It's the same mechanism. It's the same mechanism as just explained by Paul. We want to learn, we want to decide, we want to act, and we want to understand how the response was. What we have been doing actually the last 4 years is to put a lot of effort in all those 4 areas. We consider it as the 4 pillars of making an efficient cycle. And all 4 pillars are important, and all 4 pillars have to be just on top, because that's the only way it's gonna work. So the first pillar, already I think explained by Jeroen, is data availability. And that's an effort that we already were taken before we implemented Pega. When implementing Pega, we simply continue it and make sure that the relevant data is available to us. So new data is being added, existing data is being reviewed, and if not proven of value, removed. And we also consider the definitions of data, can we improve it? And always with a two focus, so not only for building the rules, but also, of course, for feeding to our adaptives, making sure that they have the data to do what they are supposed to do. Then we decide on what is the next best action for each individual customer in each individual situation. So when implementing Customer Decisioning Hub, we started with all our commercial and all our service messages throughout the different channels. And we learned about the adaptive model, and we learned to trust on the AI component of Pega. Having that then in place, having that extensive Pega strategy built, we also now started using other kind of communications. So it was the mandatory communication, and it was also the communication that was supporting customers in a specific process. Of course, it needed different logic than that we use for the commercial and the service one, but we did all incorporate it in the same environment in the Pega Customer Decisioning Hub, and therefore centralizing our brain for much more type of communications that are taking place towards our customers. When implementing Customer Decisioning Hub, at that moment in time, we also faced a migration project. So we started by migrating touchpoint channel by channel over the 4 years, while also new channels have been introduced. So momentarily, we have about 12 channels up and running and all connected to the same brain, and also then open for the different kind of communications that we do to our customers. And then we simply act and watch. So we have connected all the touch points. When connecting all the touch points, we also had built the logic for capturing response. And of course, that's depending upon the specific channel, but all channels have a response in it. And for instance, for our email template, we have introduced thumbs up, thumbs down, simply to add additional response for us, for the model to learn. Let me also give you an example, this time from banking perspective. What is then the mechanism capable of? So perhaps you recognize, looking into your wallet, there should be a debit card, but at this moment there isn't. So I can imagine you're a bit worried what has happened. Well, to be on the safe side, I think a good idea is to block the debit card for that moment in time, which actually you can do simply yourself by opening the app and block your debit card. I think that would give you some rest or peace of mind. So having a bit peace of mind, that helps you also, I guess, in thinking more clearly. And who knows, comes back where it was left. So you blocked your credit card, but then you found it again. So the next step would be, can I unblock my credit card? Well, the chances are high that you know that you can, because you have been informed by us that there is also an unblocking option in the app. So for customers being in this specific situation, knowing it real time by our real-time data delivery, we can also then send out a specific message meeting this specific situation for that specific customer, and then enabling that customer to solve his blocked credit card. So doing so, we have also then monitored on response, and we can definitely see how the response is then positively received with our customers in that specific situation, compared to indeed giving all the customers the information that, by the way, if in the case your debit card is blocked, please be aware that there is a feature in the app to deblock it. So on working on all those 4 pillars, we have, I think, been able this past quarter to add more data, to also add more actions. So going to this meeting, I thought let's give a count to the number of actions that we have presented since the first day of this year, since the 1st of January, and it was more than 1,600 different actions that we offer our customers in the different situations, having a different behavior. And that's all for us material, of course, for the adaptive models to learn. And thereby we see an increase every year in, you could say, the outcome of that process. And again, for this year, we have, with our partners, because it's a chain of disciplines that work closely together to make this work, we again, for 2022, decided to increase our measurement on relevance. So we have a measurement for relevance created. It's, you could say, kind of related to the positive outcome of our communication. And for 2022, we decided to increase it with, again, 10%. And by increasing that is not because we will target the audiences, but the other way around. We have now the mechanism in place, and we want to capture, to add additional communication that's going on into that centralized brain. So the centralized brain is indeed getting more intelligent every year. Perhaps that intelligent that it can read this word. Let me give it back to you, Paul.
Yep, I think we have a wrong personalization for this audience, but this is actually the Greek word, the very roots of empathia. So the topic we talked about, actually, the goal we want to receive or reach by implementing the AI in our environment. So empathy. And I think as the human ability of empathy took time over years, over thousands of years, actually, it also takes time to implement an AI into your company and until you reach the actual situation that you are able to create something like empathy. Because one thing is also clear, the situation in the branch is quite difficult to reproduce in a digital context. So we are not there yet. Customers are still getting ads for, I don't know, investments once they are in financial problems. And that's something you absolutely want to avoid in these situations, because imagine this would happen in a branch. That's absolutely a showstopper, a killer. But I think we are on a good way in order to create a certain level of empathy, human empathy for our customers online. And actually, in the end, you also have to be quite convinced of your goal, and this is one mission of the Rabobank. Our vision is to grow a better world together, And one of our missions in there is actually to gain financial health for our customers and optimize that over time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving yet another great example of the what, why, and how of one-to-one customer engagement. And of course, I have a question for Paul, if I can read my handwriting. No, sorry, question for Ludo, actually. So Ludo, you were mentioning on your slides that there is a 10% increase in relevance. Now, I know, and I don't want hard numbers, but can you quantify that 10% relevance into a monetary gain, right? And if so, how can you measure that?
Well, good question, and it's certainly a question that is discussed also internally. At this moment in time, I do not have the exact amount, so it's not that I didn't want to share it with all of you. But to be honest, we do not have the exact number. So we focus on the positive outcome. Part of our, quite a large part of our communication is purely about service. And the advantage of this measurement is that it's also covering those service messaging. Having that said, I think definitely preparing for the next year, we do have quite some initiatives going on indeed measuring it also on the, you could say, hard product conversion. So for that, we will definitely depend on our marketing colleagues who are actually building now, or you could say improving their dashboard to incorporate also all the Pega communications.
Okay, good. Well, thanks so much. Question for you, Paul. I just made it up because we got some time. So you were talking. So this is going to be a tough. So you were talking about artificial intelligence. Now, yes. How do you keep your artificial intelligence unbiased, and how do you make it sure that it makes the right and honest decisions?
The right and honest decision. Yeah, that's actually a quite important point. We were not able to take along in the presentation, so thanks for the question. But actually, we are also using Pega to send out our legal communication, duty of care. That's quite a topic in the Netherlands, and we quite recently introduced a communication framework where we are giving like hard decisions, so more based on the decision tree on certain points in the customer journey in order to guarantee our ethical standards and obligations from within the Netherlands and our responsibility as a cooperative bank as well. And I think that's quite important to, for sure, let the AI decide, but at certain critical points to build in decisions based on your ethical standards, because this is something an AI is not guaranteeing from the beginning and which is not implemented yet.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the honest answer. All right, thank you once again for your insights. And with that, the last speaker of today before we move into the panel, and that is Rob Vermeer from Merkle. And Rob will focus predominantly on the how in today's story, so the what, why, and the how.
And the how.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, René. So there's a timer. Yep, good. So last speaker of the day. That's always, of course, that can be challenging. You've heard lots of good stories already. I will try to indeed give you some extra information, some of the stuff you may not have heard yet, focus a bit on the how, but let's get started. So some essential steps, essential, towards a one-on-one customer experience. And my name is Rob Vermeer, I'm the head of MarTech for Merkle Northern Europe, and that means that I'm responsible for marketing technology implementation and also service throughout the region. So, delivery guy. In Dutch I say the hoe dan man, meaning how are we actually going to do it? But let me start with my personal journey. So I've been around in MarTech and database marketing from the beginning, as you can see. And from the beginning, we've always tried to move the bar, right? It started with database marketing, then came cross-channel, next best action, omnichannel, et cetera, et cetera. And every time we thought, now we have the solution. Right, something new popped up, and the next step in relevance, because the theme across all of this, that was already mentioned, is actually relevance. How are we getting more and more relevant every time we engage with our customers, right? So actually, I've been in customer relevance for the last 25 4 years now, almost. Yeah, so, and I still like it. I still love it because there's, new opportunities coming up every day. And also, we are seeing new expectations every day. Our customers are expecting from us that we actually are becoming more and more relevant to them, right? And that's what we call the customer expectation economy, as you would say it. And, as was already pointed out by Paul, the personal selling, of course, is where we come from, right? Personal engagement. And then, today we are in the area of what we call personalization. It's called hyper-personalization or whatever you want to call it. But actually what happens is that we use a lot of data, tons of data, to be able to engage, to have the next best action, next best experience with our customers, which is a great thing, but also, it is different from that, let's say, that relationship we used to have. Why? Because it forgets about, what you do over time and how you build up your relationship. And how you actually, are becoming, you are real and relevant towards your customers. And we believe that for tomorrow, we can be in the personal experiences. What that means actually is that you take all that data in a moment, but you indeed combine it with everything you know of the customer to be truly, truly relevant, and not just talk about marketing, as a sales engine, but also to be relevant in terms of service and actually have the next best experience ready for your customer. And that's the difference. That's what we are aiming for. Now, and as we said, right, today, people are looking for personal experience, but also being authentic. So being, being true to your brand, being true to who you are, being true to the message you want to give, being also, connecting and understanding the customer and having all the historical data to be really relevant. And they expect that from you. And 80 to 90% of customers actually expect that from you, but only 20 to 30% says that actually brands are, delivering on that. So there's a huge task for us all. So, at Merkle we see that as well. And actually we say, hey, we need to be able to help, to catch up, to help our clients catch up with this transformation. And it starts with media and being relevant in the moment. It continues with creativity to be relevant in the experience. But actually what we want to achieve is what we call customer experience management, and that is actually bringing all that together and acknowledging the relationship over time. And the thing is, our customers, our clients are asking us, hey, Rob, can you help me to orchestrate the journey? And when you think of orchestration, you think of an orchestra, right? That makes sense. But these are not the customers in the orchestra, right? These are all the people and all the tools and everything which needs to be together to actually to create these experiences, right? And the idea would be that the marketeer will be there, to direct all those channels and touch points in a beautiful symphony, right? Actually to create this beautiful experience. Now that would be nice if this would be your audience, right? But in fact, it's a bit different. Your audience is interactive. It plays part in the music. It's not just listening, it's engaging with it, right? You should respond. You should be able to improvise and surprise them, right? Actually, to create the experiences in interaction with your customers. Now, and we're not talking anymore about one-on-one in a personal way. We're talking about doing this for all your customers. That means that you have to find the rhythm of all your customers, right? To understand them, to understand to lead them actually in the dance. And that is actually what we call next best experience. Now, this all sounds very probably, nice or not, but I'll leave that up to you. But the point is, of course, it can also be very daunting, right? It can actually be intimidating even. Thinking of that we have to be relevant to all those customers in all those channels at the same time, to do all those individual dances. And most businesses actually don't know where to start. And the question is, how can we help them, right? There's lots of questions when you think about this. I don't have the people to build it, right? It's very complex. I don't have the people to run it. I'm actually convinced myself, but I have to, there's so many stakeholders. It's too big. I don't know where to start, I think we are boiling the ocean. We should be more pragmatic, right? I don't want another multi-year implementation. Of course, these are all things we can go through your mind when you see this. It's like, it's really, it might be really relevant, but at the same time, it's daunting. You've got all those questions of how can you actually do that? How we do this at Merkle actually is that we say, okay, we really want to help you by introducing what we call a value-driven approach. Now there has been, and I'm happy that I'm the last speaker because now, it's already explained what I mean by that, right? You're looking into the use cases, looking into relevance, finding the value, stuff, which is all, very relevant. But this value-driven approach, can only be achieved if we become digital winners. And how to become a digital winner is to actually have both the capability and the maturity to be able to execute, right? That makes you a digital winner. Because if you do have the capability, but you do not have the maturity, actually you will get into disillusion because you have this beautiful, let's say, tooling, including Pega, but hey, you don't get the value from it. The other way around, if you have maturity, but you don't have capability, it will lead to frustration, right? Because I've got all these great ideas, but the tool, the environment just doesn't work that way, right? So what we want to do is we want to combine it. In reality, actually, what you see is that you have, both in your company. You will have frustration and you have disillusion, and you probably will also have quite a lot of inertia. And the idea is, of course, that we are going to create digital winners. But we can start small. We don't have to do big. We can find the digital winners within the company and actually help them, enable them, to be the lightning example. I'll get back to that. But, to do so, we have to bring, and sorry, this is quite a few sheets with models, so hopefully we'll share the slides. We need to bring everyone together. And what it actually means, bringing everyone together, is that we, in our approach, start not with a solution. We don't start with, you need to do this, or you need to implement a tool, or you need to, change your organization. What we want to do is, because why would you, right? The first thing what we want to do is to actually align and make sure that we understand what it is that you want and what you want to achieve, that we are talking about common goals and have a clear objective. After that, when we've done that, then we can say, okay, but what is actually the problem, right? So where are you today, right? And what would be the ultimate outcome? So what is your vision? What is your, what is the potential value we can create? And what kind of capabilities do you actually need? And only after that, we'll move into solutionizing, right? And think about the, ideation, and check those ideas and start to deliver. So that's the idea. It's really important. I will give you one example. Sometimes, one of my sales people comes to me and said, hey, Rob, we've got this great opportunity. And so a few years ago, it was the same. We've got a guy in company XYZ, and he's really, he's on a senior level, C-level, and he's really, enthusiastic about what we're going to do, and he really wants to get things going, right? And that is great, of course, because that actually helps a lot to actually, be able to start the project, get the funding, get the business case and everything. The point was that he was driving everything. As soon as he left, what did we see? We came into a lot of trouble because, we did not do the alignment phase in the right way because we were so enthusiastic about the whole project. And that you see that happening a lot. So it's really important that you actually take the time to bring everybody in the company together. Not just marketing, but think of sales, think of service, think of products, think of IT, think of the data people, BI. Do this together. That's the only way to really, start a successful transformation. Let's zoom in a bit on the research and define, okay? Let me look at time. Yeah, I'm actually quite good. So what we say is, for research and define, so to think, to describe where you actually are as a company. So what is it that you want, and where are you today, right? We have identified 6 areas which could be considered to actually get a good view on where you are today and also describe where you want to go to. It's not only about data and technology, it's not only about organization, but it's actually about this is from our years of experience, these are the, let's say, 6 elements we really found to be crucial, right, in order to be able to go into what we call this next best experience. So it's about vision and strategy, data enablement, technology and orchestration, experience and activation, analytics and optimization, and last but not least, the organization. So, and the idea is that, of course, what we do with our customers, we say, okay, where are you today, right? And that means that we try to understand, oh, this is a bit off in terms of fonts, but you get the message, I guess. that we need to understand where you are. Are you, developing? Are you foundational? Are you connected? Or are you adaptive? And what it actually means is how real-time and customer-centric are you today? And by doing so, we actually enable you to get a good understanding, and also ourselves, of course, to really be able to help you to get a good understanding of your organization. But because if we know where we come from, we can also describe where do we want to go, right? And where do we want to go? We say it's really important to translate these buzzwords like customer experience, omnichannel activation, it's yada, yada, yada. It's all very important, but we need to translate it into something what does it mean to your company? And that's what we do with our customers. We help them to identify their vision. This is an example for a company where we implement a CRM platform and say, hey, what does this actually mean for our people and our customers? Who do we want to be? How do we want to, make this happen? And by doing it like this, actually having this, approved, so let's say, by everybody in the project, we kind of create a dot on the horizon where everybody, feels like, yes, that's the way to go. And that also makes the discussions in a later stage easier because we can always get back to this, right? Because from this, actually, what we will do is bring in the value perspective. So, understanding from the objective, what kind of value is actually in this, right? How can we identify let's say the value in terms of of monetizing it, but also in terms of NPS, which is also mentioned, in terms of experience and engagement, customer lifetime value in the end. We have a methodology for that. I will not go into the details there, but actually what we do is we translate those objectives, we peel them off, and we try to quantify them as much as possible to get a clear view on what we can achieve. But at the same time, we don't. That's actually what we call, let's say, from the top and to topwards down, so to say. The other thing we do is actually that we go bottom up by looking into customer use cases. It was already mentioned to talk to the customer, to people who are engaging with customers. Hey, where do you think we can improve? Where do you think we can make the difference? And start to blueprint those use cases, right? So, for instance, in the channel web, we think we can do a far better, with service. If we actually have the right data there, we can, be much more relevant to our customers. And we start to feel that off as well and look at the underlying capabilities. And combining that, let's say, top view, the KPI view, with the use case view, actually helps you to get a complete view on how can we actually generate this value and what kind of capabilities do we need? And the good thing is that, we can focus there on the 20% that makes you unique, because 80% of, what you need for being relevant and creating these personal experiences is actually not so much different from company to company, right? The 20% which defines you, that's what we will focus on. It also helps you, enables you to go quicker there. Instead of having to, start from scratch, there's already a lot of material and information available. So, once we have defined what we want to do and the use cases, it's time to look at solutions. And when you think solutions, a lot of people think about this, right? Nice architectural diagrams, with data, technology, all the things we need to do, the things we need to build, the things we need to connect, to integrate, everything. And of course, that is really, really important, and it's a big part of the solution. But what we think is actually even more important is the process and the organization. And there's two things there, right? It's not just about bringing data and technology together. It's not about sorry, I was distracted. Data and technology together. It's also about process and organization. And what means that you need to have a change of thinking and a change of behavior, right? So, and it's not about what you have to do, but it's a logical implication if becoming really customer-centric, right? To make sure that we all are working on this next best experience, that we can have decisions made quickly and easily, that we have collaboration in teams, that we actually can act quickly on the data, on the learnings we get, as was explained by the previous speakers as well. So those two things, data architecture, technology, and process and organization. That's what we do in ideation. And then in the end, it's all about the delivery, right? It's all nice that we do this, but it's about the delivery. And the delivery is very simple. We say, think big and start small. You remember probably that I said we need to work with those use cases, right? And those use cases enable you to make it work, as we call it. Because we can start with those use cases and create value quickly. At the same time, from a top-down perspective, we can work on a customer strategy and work with you to actually, translate into, in designing, enabling, and implementing the omnichannel customer experiences. But that's more from a top-down perspective. The cool thing is, if we use this use case-based approach to quickly start, to quickly create value, we can then make it better because we already know the framework of the strategy we want to implement on the long term. Right? So the long-term strategy, we combine it with the use cases to actually create value. And that's the idea. And in the long term, of course, we can benefit from all the work we already do with the use cases and all the learnings from there to actually become really relevant and make it bigger. So it's a two-way approach. So, and for those use cases, to be able to start small, it's really important that we do a prioritization of the use cases, right? And for that, we use actually 4 terms for, let's say, levers, if you want. So, complexity, sensibility, business impact, and resources. So, all the use cases we identified, we say, okay, how complex is it? Does it make sense from a business perspective? What is actually the revenue we can create from it? And do we have the people for it? And this is a very simple model because it really helps you to prioritize quickly and make sure that we start with use cases which are both feasible and valuable. And the key thing with this is rhythm. The key thing with this is actually getting to a rhythm where you, for the long term, every year, think of your strategies. Every 6 months, think of the data points you want to collect and to get. Every 3 months, think about the tests you want to do, the hypothesis you want to test, and make sure that you have the use cases in place. And every month, so to say, you execute on that, and you make sure that you run your, not just run your campaigns, but you have your interactions, you have your actions, and that you evaluate them constantly. And this rhythm actually really helps you to make sure that you stay relevant and you stay on top of the game. And that you make sure that you get into results quickly. So in the end, if you do that, if you use the rhythm, if you find the relevant use cases, if you connect them to the bigger story, if you are able to optimize the organization, it really makes you thrive, right? And I want to end with give you 5 key, let's say, key points to consider, 5 tips, if you will, to actually thrive. And the first one is actually customer-centric view is essential. So the data is key. Make sure that you have the data available, right? It cannot be mentioned enough. It's one of the hardest things to do because it doesn't come automatically. You really have to collect it, clean it, bring it together, make it, actionable. The second thing is leave no one behind, right? Make sure that you have everybody in the organization with a role, there's every stakeholder involved, and get buy-in for the dream. That's the only way to go on this long journey and actually get that destination. The third thing is set clear KPIs and act towards them, and use cases, right? Value cases to bring focus and to help you to deliver, because they will help you to prioritize in the implementation. And number 4 and 5 are equally important, and that's why they are both 4, I guess, in the sheet. Yeah. It's both mastery and autonomy. So don't forget the people. Make sure that you enable the people in your company. You may have people there who've been working there for a long time. Take the time to actually, to get the buy-in for the dream and to inspire them to get into action. And the other thing, and this is just as important, is autonomy. Make sure the people feel not part of a big, a big, let's say, machine which is, creating next best actions, but actually have them, manage the customer journey, manage the customer experience, and give them the autonomy to measure and decide. Thank you very much.
So you don't get away that easily.
Ah.
So I learned a lot, and I've written down some notes. And when you were talking about the music to my ears, right? And you were talking about next best experience is about dancing and music. Wow,
Yeah.
awesome. If I
I'm a
knew
very
that
good
this
dancer. Do you want
morning,
to
right?
dance?
No, thanks. But so yeah, what a great business are we in then, right? When we can talk about dancing and music. So you were talking about the value-driven approach. Now, one of the things that I always wonder is if we work with organizations and we try to improve their NPS, right? So how can you quantify an increase in NPS?
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
You put me on the spot here.
I do.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
So how do you quantify? Well, the point is that you can, because if you think about value as customer lifetime value, a big part of that is actually to understand, people stay with you when they're happy, right? That's usually the case, also in marriage and everything, and also on the dance floor, right? So the thing is that you make sure that you can relate NPS to customer lifetime value, because if you do measure this historically, you can look at NPS and say, hey, what effects did we see on people leaving the company, not buying our goods anymore or our services?
Yep.
So there is a relationship. How it's exactly defined, of course, it depends on the occasion. But there is really a clear, and we all feel it, we all understand it, right? But you can actually measure it. And if you don't measure it, we can set up tests, we can set up, let's say, NPS improving strategies, and start to measure what kind of impact it has on this lifetime value.
Okay. Yeah, sorry for putting you on the spot, but I like the answer. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. So with that, I would like to encourage the people that are actually remotely connected to ask questions. I already have a couple coming through on this device, so I can read along with what everybody's writing. But for the audience here, we have a cube. And that cube is basically something that we can throw with, because it's got a built-in mic. Now, one of the things that if you want to ask a question, you need to eat the mic. So there's a black patch, and you basically put it in your face, and then you ask your question, so that everybody can hear you, also the people back home, because I can probably hear you, but everybody should be able to hear you. One request from the technicians behind the curtain is to not hit the cameras. That was just a request, and I had to pass that through. So I would like to invite all the speakers, but I also would like to invite a special guest that we have today. And I'll sit on that little sort of orangey sort of piece of concrete, because I know my spot, and I want Mr. Sherman to sit here as well. So Don Sherman is our special guest, and Don is in Pega. He's the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer, and Vice President for Product Strategy and Market. And Don has been with Pega for 25 years, so he's seen the company grow from being a relatively small, probably more business process management type company into the organization that we are today. And Don, I have a first question for you. So if everybody, all the speakers maybe, can sit on one of those red stools, it doesn't matter where you sit, because I'll take, I hope it's not concrete. Oh no, it's not. I'll go just sit on this one. That's the easiest. Good.
You're standing?
No, you
I
can
can
sit
also
there.
do that.
Oh, we are already one short.
We are.
Oh,
Oh, are
so
we?
we're too short. Anyway, I have the mic in just in case someone has a question already.
I'm the young.
Yeah. Think about it for a second.
I hope this works. Probably a question for the gentleman from Rabo, but maybe also for Jeroen from Achmea. When you talk about data, we see a lot about data about interactions and actions from customers. But from Liz's presentation, I also saw context data, things like economical climate. Do you already have experience with taking context data into your AI to look at people, how they act under certain circumstances?
And there was a question for?
Well, let's start with Rabo.
Start with the Rabobank.
Yeah, good question. To be honest, I don't think so. But then having that said, I do not have the complete overview of what our data scientists are creating. So I'm not definitely 100% sure on that.
Yeah, I think we have one where it's about the Ukrainian crisis, where we actually are taking along external factors in order to create context. And we are actually able to do that by send events which are kind of leading the AI in a certain direction once the context is there, because obviously it would take too much time to learn from the data to on how to react. So I think that might be an example for taking contextual information into account. But we are also thinking about, for example, the weather, take that into account.
Economical climate?
Yeah.
The weather is a good point, by the way, because one of our clients, Merlin Entertainments, they own the lot of big theme parks, and they use a lot of weather data to actually, make sure we get the next best actions for our customers right. And you can imagine that you would put them to the more, let's say, roofed attractions and everything, and it really helps to keep them in the parks longer. So this is what you see a lot. Yeah.
Another place where we've seen contextual data used a lot is in the contact center, right? Because I have individual data about the customer, but I also have contextual data about what the current wait time is, what the current queue time is, and I might want to deprioritize a lengthy cross-sell upsell conversation if I've got 100 people sitting waiting to get their questions answered. So that's another set of contextual data that we see used and fed into the models a lot.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, to a certain extent.
To what extent? Okay, to what extent does it not answer the question?
Well, I think every individual, I think you should look at what Liz had in her presentation about all these elements that influence our behavior. So I'm very interested to see whether it really changes. At the moment we're looking at the output. So we're looking at how people behave under, or what they're doing actually, and somehow we're trying to relate it to circumstances. But if we have a more personal view on how you interact on weather, on the economical climate, on crime rates, etc., it may have an effect on your communication to create empathy because you're taking the circumstances into the environment. Or if I look at a Rabobank office, if you walk in there, people talk about weather, or they talk about business is bad or something, and that creates empathy as well.
True.
Yeah? So that's why I asked the question.
Okay, thank you. Good. I have a question for Don Sherman. So Don, so today we are talking about one-to-one customer engagement, right? And that is one of the pillars in Pega from a technology perspective. And what I'm very curious about, where do you see this market evolve into? So what is the next big thing in customer engagement technology?
So I heard people beginning to talk about this a little bit, but I think the push to more and more real-time data in the form of signals, event streams, IoT devices, etc., is going to give us the opportunity to become increasingly proactive in how we engage with our clients. So much of one-to-one, at least where we start, is often on these sort of inbound. The customer's already decided that they're going to put their hand up and contact us, and we want to have the right conversation with them. And that is incredibly valuable, right? So I don't think we should stop doing that. But I think the forefront is how do we combine the data science with event streams so that we can actually be ahead of where the customer is. And if we can do that in a way that is incredibly relevant, it also can be non-creepy, right? The risk, I think, with some of the proactivity stuff is if you're not relevant, it comes across as intrusive. So you've got to get the relevance right, but if you can get the relevance right, you actually have the opportunity to be in front of the customer before they've even come to you with a need. And I think that's the kind of proactivity and personalization that increasingly customers are going to expect as we move to sort of this next best experience, not just the next best action.
Okay, thank you. I have a question online, and then we move to the gentleman in the back of the room who's holding the cube. So the question is, let me see, who is it for? Oh, there's a question for the Rabobank again, and then I have a question for Achmea, and then it's your turn. So the question for Rabobank, are you heavily depending on adaptive models with your 1,600 plus actions? And then it says, are you still using hard eligibility rules? And if so, is there a strategy using eligibility AI? Or a combination. So how are you? So how are you using artificial intelligence?
Yeah, so that is still the core. So that was definitely the core when we started, and it's still the core for all the, you could say, the communication that is not mandatory or is not directly supporting a specific process.
Yep.
And that is still the main numbers of MBA. So I don't have the exact percentage on that 1600, but it's definitely still the main course, and that is fully depending on AI. Yes, we also have eligibility rules. Our standard is that we minimize on use of eligibility rules.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not the case that all actions can do without them.
Understood. It's always that combination, right?
It's always a combination, yeah.
Yeah. And then one more question for Centraal Beheer, and that is, on which channels can Centraal Beheer actually recognize the customers? Because you were talking about that you cannot recognize a customer on every channel, or that is tough, right? Yeah. So on which channels are you recognizing customers?
Well, we can recognize customers on all channels, actually. On the website, of course, it's not always easy.
Yeah.
But we're trying to promote customers to log in on the website, make the my environment of the website as relevant as possible, so we can interact with them more personal. On every other channel, we are able to recognize the customer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is probably a question that requires a very long answer, but that's a follow-up question to that one. It says, what exact data is Centraal Beheer storing and using for its solution? That is that big flat table, probably, right? Yeah. No, that was a follow-up question, but I think we need to take that on.
Yeah, yeah.
So the gentleman in the back, if you can please state your name and the company you work for.
Gerard-Jan Princé, I'm working at Nationaal Nederlanden, so we're in the same branch, so to say. I was willing to ask a question to you, Jeroen. So if you look back, starting in 2015, building the capability of the next best actions over different channels and everything, what are your learnings and what would you do differently if you could start all over again?
That's a good question, actually. Well, the thing that we liked very much is that we started off small and started off with new channels that we did not have any personalization efforts on, because most of the outbound channels, the email marketing, direct mail that we have at that time, there were already a lot of personalization efforts in place. And a lot of marketers were looking into the possibilities of using these channels. But we created something new with personalization on the website and within the app, within the IVR system that was completely new. So that helped us a lot to create a lot of interest in the organization with the possibilities we are having to personalize. And well, the thing that we might do different when we started off, because the problem is we know now a lot more than we did back then. So if we knew everything that we know now, how we could optimize and structure everything, we could move a lot faster and focus on scaling up everything that we did. So that always, when you try and make an effort in personalizing the communications, focus on how can we scale this up easily without having a lot of capability of a lot of people needed in place to build all the use cases. And I believe that currently we are setting up a new system. The system we are migrating to in the cloud is creating this possibility to scale up the personalizations and also not only focus on the individual actions, but focus on the goals of the customer journeys and not only the goals of the individual actions.
It's actually very interesting what you said about using a new channel, because that also prevents you from the pitfall that you actually have to recreate a lot of stuff you're currently doing. Yeah. Right, and where this new product suddenly becomes like almost a migration. You don't want to do that, right? You really want to have this new philosophy, new way of thinking. I think that's really, really interesting. Yeah. It's a good point.
another question from the audience here.
I saw in the presentations the channel silos being washed away, but now we are facing the data silos by the regulations, GDPR, no more cookie data, you can't use it, and also in-house it's getting very difficult to see all the data of the customer. So how are you dealing with the upcoming data silos? I think Rabo or Achmea.
Well, we try to be as transparent as possible to our customers. Actually, we try and focus on what the customer wants and what the customer wants to share. If you want personalization in your app, for instance, and you want to use a GPS data, it should be relevant for the customer to give us this information. Otherwise, it's data for us, and we could do everything with it. So being transparent in what are we going to do with the data, and of course, always get an opt-in from your customer when you're dealing with a personalization.
Okay. So thank you very much. I got a follow-up question on that for you, Liz, because we were talking about the data silos, so that could be an objection that gets thrown at you when you're talking about customer engagement technology, right? So what are the most common objections or the most common challenges that people throw at you when you're talking to the people in the field?
Yeah, good question. We can sit here for a while, but let's think of the key ones. I think one that actually points back to what Rob was saying is that the organizational change and the way of thinking, the behavioral change, is, I think, at times underestimated. I think that indeed, if you have a couple of guys, girls, who get it, it's not enough. You need to indeed get that buy-in from the organization, and once that's not there, you feel almost physically the objections. And it's not per se in the words that they say, but in the time that they give you or don't give you. I think that's a key one, because it's also change, and change is scary. Nobody likes change. So in order to have everyone pointing into the same direction, you have to kind of already make a decision internally and determine, we want to do this, we want to become a personalized bank, for example, and then you speak to then you look at the opportunities, because of course there's a lot of organizations as well. That's another objection, that think that they themselves can make it or do it, which is great, but we often see at some point the scalability challenge. Mm-hmm. And the value, it's also mentioned already before. It can be challenging to put a value number on this change, because you might not see it in the first year, the ROI, if you will. I think those might be the three key ones.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. And that's interesting. Is there another question in the room? Because otherwise, I have a follow-up question. Oh, there's two more. Interesting. You can throw it. Yeah. Awesome.
All the way.
I have a question for Jeroen. What mechanism do you use to prioritize your actions?
We have a mechanism where we use models and value in context. So the models are the adaptive models that are available within the personalization brain of Pega. But the adaptive models are trained on feedback from the channels, so very directly. So the value is also a combination of financial value and predictive models that we train outside of the system. So we train on goals we are trying to deliver on sales or retention or services, for instance. And the context also takes part of making the prioritization. The specific context of the customer on a specific event also decides what is the most relevant
Okay, thank you.
action.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Great.
Yeah.
It's more of a question for Pega, for you, I think. Sorry, I forgot your name.
Don.
Okay. What are your because if you use value like Achmea uses, then you're basically decreasing a little bit the relevance at that time. What are your what's your opinion on using that?
So we actually break the prioritization down into a relatively simple formula, and it's P times V times L.
Yeah.
So P is propensity, which is relevance. How relevant is this offer to the particular individual you're talking to? V is the value. What's the value to the organization if they accept this offer? Both near term, but you also can use predictive models to figure out things like long-term value, lifetime value impact. And then L is a little bit slippery. L is your sort of ability to put a thumb on the scale, right? Because business modes change. You may come into the latter half of the year and want to have certain products that are renewing. You may have a book of business that you want to kind of push out at certain times. So L is sort of more of a manual mechanism to put a little bit of weight where at any given time the business wants to emphasize. But your ultimate prioritization is at the intersection or the multiple of propensity times value. Because that's the balance. And I think every organization will make its own decisions about where that lever kind of tweaks, right? And where that lever tweaks towards propensity. Are we willing to trade off value if it's relevant to the customer? Some organizations are more, some aren't. Are we willing to trade off relevance if we think it's a really high value offer that we can? Some organizations are, but that thinking in terms of P times V times L gives you at least a framework of how you can conceptualize the prioritization.
Okay, thank you.
Throw me a curveball.
A very good afternoon, Nick Schilders, Vodafone Ziggo. Question mainly maybe for Jeroen, but also for the rest of the panel. You were talking about customer recognition, and indeed, on websites, on app, well, it's particularly websites, you can also have customers which you don't recognize, prospects, or which you partly recognize based on cookies or other identifications. At the moment, we at Vodafone Ziggo are sort of discussing with Pega how to deal with that and how to integrate lead management campaigns, prospect campaigns, that kind of stuff. Are you also looking into that, Jeroen, or maybe others in the panel?
Well, of course, we use the context data that we have on the specific channel or the environment where we connect with a prospect or a visitor, and we use the data that is available on that specific touch point to prioritize what is more relevant, and we still can use cookies when a visitor is coming back to us on the same apparatus, on the same browser. Yeah, of course, we also have prospects and leads within the system. But when you want to recognize a prospect, you need to have some identification. So you should look into possibilities in trying engaging with the customer with their email address, for instance, and can we make it more relevant for the customer to log in on a specific environment on the website, or not a customer or a prospect, I mean. So this is something you could look into, and you could use this email address.
Yeah, and that is actually a recurring theme in the questions online as well. So the question is, how do Achmea and Rabo deal with prospects in CDH? And CDH stands for customer decision, that's the technology. And which data is made available in real time? And that's a good question. Which data is made available in real time by Rabobank? And why? Question for you?
Maybe. Yeah, as I already said, we have 9.1 million existing customers, so our focus is pretty much on holding these customers. And by that, we are also focusing mainly on channels which are available in our environments like the app or the online environment, but we are also personalizing spots on our website once we have prospect data or prospects visiting Rabobank. And then I think it's really important to, again, focus on the context. Maybe look at the referrer where somebody's coming from, look at the search words somebody used on AdWords in order to find you, and then look where they entered the website and make really use of the data you have. There's nothing more you can do. And yeah, we built in cross-platform identification as well in order to try to identify the customers across our platforms. Yeah, but in the end you have to deal with the situation you are in, and that maybe means also to go back to some yeah, older approaches in be creative in showing your content. And,
yeah, if I can add to that, of course, we are fortunate that most of our web visitors are known, are visiting the web, are logging in. So for us, it's a relatively small portion. We definitely deal with that portion, so there's also logic built to accommodate them. Of course, the question was also about what data did you then capture? Well, that's compared to what we know of customers, very small, of course. So very small decisioning going on there.
And there is one question that's still coming back, and it's asking, if you have to make a rough estimate, what percentage of your 1,600 next best actions are actually left to adaptive modeling?
Is that meant as a cliffhanger for our next meeting? Or
No, it might be, I don't know.
Well, I would say this moment more than 80% of our actions are commercially or service driven.
And they rely on?
And they rely on models,
Really?
definitely.
Okay, thanks for that. Now it's clear, so I hope I don't get any more questions on the 1,600 actions that you're having outstanding. Any questions from the audience here? Oh, there's more. So, are we okay to continue for a couple minutes? I think we are, right? There's still questions. I don't have a hard stop.
No.
Hi,
That's fine.
good afternoon. Thanks for your session, all of you. Nahom from Aretians. I had a question related to the 9 million, 1 to 9 million as you indicated. In your mechanism of your approach, you also showed that you had one of your last step was the learning, which was kind of a feedback that you were looking at from your customers' experience. And Liz indicated very well from signals, insight to personalization, how experience is important in there. How do you monitor those experiences? And that's also what I missed in Rabobank, or at least in Achmea, sorry. I couldn't see the feedback loop in your approach. Are you still looking into that as well?
Yeah, so if I can answer that one. I think we use it at two different purposes. So first of all, it's directly then feedback into the Pega environment to learn from. So it's directly feeding the models and thereby already impacting the very next customer in the same situation. So that's an important one. We are also monitoring it. So we have reporting in place where we can actually follow for each individual action, how did it go, what was exact the response. And thirdly, we also have our models, you could say our predictive models, that kind of monitoring what is going on. So that still is keeping track of what individuals' actions, how they performed, and if it's reflected in the way that propensities are being recalculated. So kind of having kind of a feeling to try to understand what's going on.
And that's where you drive those KPIs values out of it as well.
The KPIs in the end are, you could say, the result of the propensities by indeed making sure that the most liked actions are shown the most.
I think it's also important, as you think about feedback loops, to understand that there is timescales. And there are immediate feedback loops, which are beneficial because they can more quickly train the model. So I make a retention offer to the customer. Did the customer say yes to that retention offer? I know that right away, it's great. It's a good feedback loop, it's a great way of training the model. Only one problem with it. It actually doesn't measure whether the offer achieved the business goal I have, which is 6 months from now, is that customer still a customer? Because my guess is that retention decision was made based on long-term value of the customer, not can we sell them this offer. So as you think about feedback loops, it's also important to think about the sliding timescale so that you have things that can work quickly and get your models trained, but you also have longer viewpoints that let you actually inform the model in a way that's more precisely tied to the actual business outcomes you're trying to drive.
That is exactly the reason that we use the predictive models on the business outcomes, on our business value, because otherwise we are trying to create a click.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're successfully getting clicks, but you're not 100% sure if those clicks are connected to the outcomes.
It's not always a good proxy for the results that you want to have, especially on the outbound channels. The inbound channels, the proxy is pretty good, but if you send out an email and somebody clicks in an email, it is not, of course, not directly a sale. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so I think I'm the last person to make a question, right?
I don't know.
Maybe not. So I just wanted to say, so it's amazing to hear Jeroen talking about 85% of retention, on a use case, and also Rabo, 1,600 actions, 80% of that commercial or service driven, 12 channels and all. So a question for both Rabo and Achmea is, if you had to choose one use case of the future right now, so where do you see your own organizations going? You're already doing cross-sell, upsell, commercial, service-driven. Where do you see Rabobank going, Ludo and Paul? And you, Jeroen, you're doing retention, amazing, like reactive retention on people going into the website, being very successful. Where would you see, an insurer like Achmea, like Central here, going next? If you had to choose one, name one. Just.
Well, if I need to name one, a lot of processes in the organization we use a little bit of personalization currently, but we would like to expand it. The processes that are considering all the claim handling is not traditionally a marketing or sales process that we have personalization on all journeys. But these more complex processes we want to personalize even further to help customers in the moment that is really important for the customer. And we want to help them, and we believe that personalization can help our customers in the moment that it's really needed. So that's a process in the organization that I believe journey where we can leverage more and more personalization efforts.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, well, if I can add, so interesting question. So you heard me tell about the 4 pillars, and then you asked me to choose one, if I understand correctly. No, just kidding. I think the even ongoing personalization. So this time it's 1,600. I imagine it's gonna be more, because it will be suiting that specific situation in that specific channel, and new channels will be added, and that will be a growing number. Having that said, I also think that we will be growing more to personalization, more than just simple MBAs, if I can call it that way, but logging into the app, knowing who you are, that we can benefit more from what we already captured for you, scored for you on the customer decision hub.
Okay. Final question.
Final question. We talk a lot about technology here, but I'm also wondering, and this is for everyone on the panel, is, what is the new core skill set that you are looking for members in your team or future members in your team to make these kind of projects and technology happen and work in your organization?
The data-savvy, authentic marketeer. That would be my summary.
Yeah, we have a profile for a personalization marketer. within my team, and it is. I believe that the basis is always on the customer level. So I prefer marketing people in the team that have that like working with data and technology. So the start point is for me is the customer and marketing, and there are luckily a lot of people out there that are really interested in data and working with data and creating algorithms. Yeah, that's what I believe the profile that works for us, and is also a profile that is able to communicate with everybody within the company to get the new use cases and relevant use cases.
Maybe to add to that, I think you should never forget that you also need the other side. So actually the creative people in order to create the actions which are empathizing with your customers and actually creating the empathy. Because you got nothing if you implement it in AI, if you give no choice to the AI of which actions to choose. And there we see that we have a high value in communicating with our UX department, being creative in having several offers the AI can choose in order to offer it to a customer. And I think we see in recent developments that we are also letting an AI set up texts and do calls for us, but we are not there yet. I think that will take several more years to actually reach that state that you are even creating your creative content based on an AI. So for the time being, luckily we need humans to actually think of the creative content to show to our customers. So that's actually an expertise we also need in order to make it a success.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so to conclude this panel, I want to do a little bit of an experiment. And it's all about what did you learn today? And from you, I want one word. From you, I want 2 words. From you, I want 3 words, 4 words. And you have to decide on the last word, 1 word.
But
1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. What did you learn today? 1 word.
Okay. I think it's endless possibilities.
Possibilities. Possibilities. Okay. Can someone write it down? Possibilities. 2 words.
Empathy and experiences.
Okay. Empathy experiences. Okay. 3 words.
Oh, yeah, difficult. Can I go as last?
3 words.
3 words. Well, empathy, experiences, and signals.
And signals. Yeah, that's 4 words. You come back to you with the 3 words. Oh, the 4 words, right?
3 words, it was.
It was 3.
I wasn't
Still
sure.
3?
Still 3, yeah.
Okay, 3.
Oh yeah, share the experience.
Shared experience. So the social experiment is a little bit tricky. 1 word.
Value.
Value. So we just created a haiku, right? 1 word, 2 words, 3 words, 4 words, and a single word. Okay, didn't quite work. But what did I learn today, right? And I'm not going to summarize. I'm not going to summarize all of the meetings. But what I learned today, more or less, was the what, why, and how of customer engagement. And I would like to thank, of course, our presenters, but I'll get to that in a second. And with that answer that we just had, that haiku, we came to the end of the formal part of today's event. And of course, we are inviting the people that are here in the room to join us for drinks, and they will open the curtains and we'll remove the screen so we stay in this room. And for the people at home, working remotely, joining the live stream, basically for these people you can pour your own beverage and you're more than welcome to join. So what I would like to do is I'd like to raise the glass with everybody here to celebrate the knowledge partnership that we've established between Pega Systems and the DDMA, because that is something to definitely celebrate, and then start the conversations, because that is what we're ultimately here for. So I'd like to thank today's speakers. So in line, well, not in line, ladies first. So Liz, Jeroen, Paul, Ludo, Rob, and Don. Also, thank you for your contribution today. And I would also like to thank Sanne Fontaine, whom you may have not met, from the DDMA. So thank you, Sanne, for helping us prepare. And of course, last but not least, I would like to thank Courtney for supporting us with all the marketing activities and the whole preparation for this event. So thank you very much. And of course, I would like to thank the audience that has joined us remotely and connected. And thank you for your attention. Thank you for your questions, for the interactivity, and for your support. And I hope that everybody can get safely home. It looks okay outside. The rain is gone, so you probably can forget your umbrellas. Don't do that. If you have them, take them with you. And I hope to see you all very soon. And I see you at the bar. Thank you very much, and goodbye for now. This survey. So if you have your phone with you, you can take a picture of that QR code and that will take you to a page, and we would really appreciate your feedback. So thank you for that. Now I hope it
you.